Why it's really critical that you contact a lot of schools in college recruiting, because I hear a lot of people talk about sending 20 to 30 emails, something like that, even people who supposedly know what they're talking about in college recruiting. And I want to show you what happens if you do that. And we're just going to use cold hard numbers. Okay. So let's dive into this real quick. This is just going to be math. All right. So here's what you're looking at. Right here at the top is the schools that you're contacting. Now, I'm going to use 100. That's generally where I recommend that families start. And if you say that's crazy, I'll show you why this is important. Okay. Now, we're going to do 75% opens. That means the number of coaches, the percentage of coaches that actually open your emails. That number is not going to be 100, right? Not every single coach is going to open your email, which means if you send 100, only 75 are going to actually open your email. That number might be high, right? We'll see open rates anywhere from 50 all the way up to like 90%, right? If you have a 10% open rate, then it means that your emails are landing in spam and you need to fix that problem. The other percentages that we need to focus on here are percentage that needs your position in grad class. Now, not every school is going to be recruiting your kid's position in grad class. Excuse me. The later that you are in the process, the lower this number is because they've already filled up their rosters, right? But for now, let's leave it at 80%. Let's say you're starting, beginning a junior year or something like that. If you are a senior, that number is going to be lower for sure. Okay. Now, percentage that clicks on the video. Once a coach opens your email and they click on the video, then this is the percentage that actually do click on that video, right? I'm going to leave it at 15%. There's ways that you can make that way higher, right? You could make that 50, 60%, but a lot of times that comes at the cost of lower deliverability, meaning that you're going to get a lower percentage of opens. So there's a bit of a give and a take there. Let's just leave it at 15%. Sometimes we'll see 10%, sometimes we'll see 50%. It just depends on the campaign, what we're using it for, how we're organizing the email. There's some vanity metrics. I'm not going to get into all that right now. But the point is 15%. And then the percentage that thinks your kid is good, we're just going to leave that at 75%. Now, if you're contacting schools that are way out of your kid's talent range, that number might be 5% or 0%. But assuming that you're contacting mostly schools that your kid is capable of playing at, roughly like 75% of those schools will think that your kid is good and respond. All right. So here's what we're looking at. If you send 100 emails, you can expect, or contact 100 schools, I should say, you can expect 6.75 responses. Okay, so positive responses where a coach says, yes, we're interested in your kid. That's assuming all these other numbers are true. Now, this assumes that you're only sending one email to each coach. Now, I recommend sending more than that. So we're going to say 3. Okay. And so what we do is, because you're going to get more responses when you send more follow-ups, we're going to multiply that number by 1.5x. So that's a little bit less than 2, doubling the number of schools. We have seen that in a number of cases, but let's play it conservative and just call it 1.5x, which means instead of getting 6.75 responses, so almost 7, you're instead getting over 10. Right? And so now we're talking about double-digit interest, which is really where you want to be, if possible, right? And so this is pretty much what we see, which is a 10% reply rate. If you contact 100 schools that you are, and all else in the recruiting process is normal. You're starting at a normal time, you're contacting schools your kid is capable of playing at, and you're sending follow-ups, you could see about a 10% reply rate. All right, so this would be 10. Then what I've done is I've said, listen, if a third of those schools end up turning into scholarship offers, which is a bit of an average, right? You're going to pick up interest elsewhere besides email. You're going to pick up interest via social media, maybe some showcases and camps. Your coach introduces you to coaches. And so there's lots of other ways that you could generate scholarships, but just in general, let's say that a third of those will turn into offers, which means that you would end up with 3 scholarship offers, barring that you don't get any from anywhere else. And it's like, okay, cool. Then you have 3 options that your kid can choose between. You're not forced picking one. And of course, if we increase this number to something like 200, now we're really starting to crank and talk, right? And these are maybe conservative numbers. We've seen people who get significantly higher numbers than this. And so you could be talking to a bunch of schools and getting lots of different offers. But here's what I want to show you. This is critical. And that is, most people are sending 20 to 30. And this is what it looks like when you send 20 to 30 emails. And this is why I'm so against this. And anyone that talks about sending 20 to 30 emails to college coaches does not know what's going on in college recruiting right now. If they are recommending that, I have to assume that they are either A, lying to you, or B, don't know what's going on, because anybody that is seriously emailing college coaches on any scale is going to tell you that that is not enough, simply based on math. Okay. And so if you send 30, all these other numbers are the exact same, right? We're not dropping them. They are what they are. Then you're talking about, and most people aren't sending follow-ups to schools, right? Like more than one email to each school. And so you're talking about getting 2 replies, right? And less than 1 scholarship, meaning you don't get an offer, right? And then let's say that you do follow up with schools. Great. You're looking at roughly 3 responses, which would be a 10% reply rate. And about one of those turns into an offer. And I guess that's where your kid is going, right? And so this is why I say, listen, if you're going to contact 20 to 30 schools, you have to understand that you're probably not going to get the interest that you're looking for. Because the reality is, if you only contact 20 or 30 schools, let's also be frank about the fact that at least 10 of those are probably reach schools that your kid would love to go to, but is probably not good enough to play at. So instead of contacting 20 schools, you're actually contacting 10 schools, which is why you don't get any responses, right? And we haven't even talked about the fact that, great, let's say that you contact 30 schools and you get 3 responses, right? Okay, cool. We're making progress. That's not nothing. I don't want to discount that. I never want to take any interest or offers for granted in recruiting. It's very challenging to get interest and offers, okay? And so I don't want to take any interest for granted. 3 is a great start. And it could turn into an offer. And maybe instead of 1, you actually get 2 of the 3 that give you an offer and you have an option, right? That's great. But what I really want to point out here is, even if this is the case and you get 1 school that responds, or 2 schools, any other schools that ask you, hey, who else are you talking to? And you only give 1 or 2, you're like, I'm talking to 1 or 2 other schools. It's not a lot of validation that your kid is a good player. And they're going to say, well, if your kid was a good player, wouldn't you be talking to a bunch of schools? And so it's going to make that process even harder to get more interest. But what happens is, if you contact 100 schools, even if these are not all at the top of your list, I understand that you don't have 100 schools that you're psyched up about. But I will also say it's likely that there are schools in that number of 100 that you don't really know that much about that would actually be a great fit for your kid. But the point is that if you contact 100 schools and you get, 10 responses or something like that, and a new coach calls you and says, hey, what other schools are you talking to? You can say, I'm talking to 10 schools right now. And they go, oh, okay, kid must be a good player. Instant validation, because lots of coaches are interested, which is why you hear all the time, like, the rich get richer. That's true in college recruiting too. The more schools that you have interested, the easier it is to go get more interest, right? Because you can simply make a post on Twitter about how you took a visit to a big school and you'll get more interest, right? Or you can say that in a phone conversation and schools aren't going to be able to dawdle on you. They're going to have to move faster because they know that you're a threat to commit somewhere else. And so this is why it's so critical that you contact more schools. Now, I understand that contacting 100 schools is a lot. That's why we're in business. That's why what we do. We make that very easy for families, or we take it off their plate entirely. But the point is that if you're just going to contact 100 schools with follow-ups, you're sending 300 emails, and that's one campaign. And we would typically send multiple campaigns, right? But these numbers, if you have a systematic way of automating the process and contacting a lot more coaches, you can see how these numbers can get relatively outrageous. There's a family that we are working with right now who contacted over 400 schools, okay? They did not manually send 400 emails, and that doesn't even include follow-ups. They probably sent close to 1,000 emails, and they did not sit there and press start. Look what happens if you do this. 40 schools, right? We're talking about a completely different recruiting process. Now, depends on the talent of the player, 100%. You could send 400 emails. If your kid is not good, you're not going to get that many schools interested. But the point is that you want to get as much exposure as you can possibly get. And I need you to get out of the mindset that sending 20 to 30 is going to cut it, because it's not going to cut it. That worked like 15, 20 years ago in recruiting. You could send 30 emails and get 10 responses, 15 responses. It's just not that way anymore. So if you're going to use email as one of the primary methods that you are getting on college coaches' radars, then you must do it to this extent. Otherwise, if you're not going to go do this, then you need to find another way to get on college coaches' radars. And there's only 4 ways to do that. You can send emails, you can post on social media or DM coaches on social media. You can have your coach connect you with schools, or you can go to showcases and camps. So if you're not going to seriously contact schools at this level for email, then you lose that option. And now you're talking about social media, coach connections, showcases, and camps, right? And those are your options. And if you're not doing social media, you have camps and you have your coach's connections. And you can see how you just keep limiting yourself when the idea is like you want to get on as many coaches' radars as possible. Because if you don't have the interest and offers that you're looking for right now, it's probably because not enough college coaches know that your kid exists. More players go unrecruited, not because of a lack of talent, but because of a lack of exposure. And so all I'm saying is if we contacted 500 schools and your kid doesn't get any interest, any offers, nothing, it's not because schools didn't know who they were. It's because your kid wasn't good enough. Fine. Like you can probably live with that knowing that you did everything that you possibly could. But when we sit here and we contact 30 schools, like it's just unlikely that coaches know that you exist. I've seen players, good players, who end up getting double-digit offers, not interest, offers, 10 plus offers, who sent 30 emails and they were only talking to 2 or 3 schools. And they ended up getting way more. Why? Because more coaches knew that they existed. Like that's it. And so I just wanted to make this spreadsheet and show you the actual numbers because I don't just want to make stuff up. Like I want to show you what actually happens. Because also, let's say we said this percentage of your kid is good, right? 75%. If you contact 20 schools and 10 of them are out of your reach, that means this number's 50%. Look at the numbers here, right? This is what's happening in recruiting. This is why if you're sending emails, it's not working. Now, before we're done here, the last thing I'll say is if you're contacting 100, 200, 300 schools and you're not getting interest, that's somewhat close to this, okay? For sure, if you contact 100 schools and you only get three responses or something like that, it just might be that your kid is not that good. It might be that you're later in the process. There might be some other thing that's not going in your favor, which is like, okay, fine. You may not be able to control that. If you can, then we need to fix that. But my point is that if you're contacting a whole bunch of schools, 100 plus, 200 plus, and you're not getting interest in offers, it means that there's something off, right? It means that there's something in your email that's wrong. It means that your video is not good. It means you're only contacting schools your kid is not capable of playing at. It means that your emails are landing in spam. College coaches aren't even getting them, right? It means that there's something that has to be tweaked. Otherwise, it just means your kid's not good, right? And so, but for most of the families that I talk to, it's if they send a whole bunch of emails and they do it right, they usually get some amount of interest, more interest than they had before, right? And so, anyway, I hope that this math makes sense. I hope that this shows you why, like, if you hear someone in recruiting telling you to send 20 to 30 emails, they probably don't know what they're talking about. They're not looking at real numbers. They're just saying things that they think are true that were true 10, 15 years ago that are not true today. And so I wanted to show you the actual numbers of someone who's sending close to 40,000 emails to college coaches. We're probably over 40,000 emails now. And so I just want to give you the data so that you know what you're actually looking at and what's actually required. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you're the parent of a high school athlete and this is super daunting to you and you're like, Jack, can you show me how to automate this process? Yeah, we absolutely can. Just hit the link in the bio. You can schedule a call with us, and we're only working with juniors and seniors right now or college transfers. But regardless, I will see you guys next time.